Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, one and all. It's time for the Books That Make You show, and I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. We're talking about books that make you enter a flow state when writing or reading or being creative in general. This applies to really any time that we need focus in our lives. Maybe it's at work or at school, when completing a big project, when being an athlete, endurance, preparing for that marathon. If we are lucky, and if we are disciplined, we can sometimes enter a flow state. Now, flow is a psychological concept in which a person becomes fully immersed and engaged in an activity. Lots of folks are talking about it nowadays, but for writers and creatives, it can be particularly useful. And that is the case with our guest today. You might recognize her. Kelly Anne Manuel returns for her third time on the Books That Make You show. And she has proof of what can happen when the flow state comes to you. She's created an array of positive messages for kids with 4 captivating book series. And get this, there is a total of 31 books, one for each day of the month, in her Unput Downable series. Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Oh, Desiree, I love being on the show with you. It could be a daily event for me. If you could sort that out, then I'm in.
I'll get that going for you. I'll clear my calendar and we'll make sure that we do it every day rather than a weekly show.
Perfect.
All right, you and I, we've shared a lot. We shared some time at an event not too long ago, and we were hanging out, chit-chatting afterwards, and you told me about how when you're writing these books, you enter this flow state. And I was so fascinated by that because it's kind of a buzzword, but then it's true because I've experienced it and I've talked to so many writers and creatives who experienced it. Can you, in your own words, describe entering your flow state?
Yeah, it is. I'll call it magical. I feel it's magical when I enter flow. It's this incredible coming together of who I am, but also the universe. It's this combination of the individual plus other. And it's a connection. And when I have it could become addicting to stay in that state. So when that happens for me, I write because it's the flow is so open and available. It's almost like a channel. Or okay, here's an example. So back when we had AM, FM radio, and we would have a knob to get onto a channel on the radio to hear our favorite music, you would have to take that knob and you'd have to dial it one way. You'd have to dial it another. And until you got that perfect vibration from the radio that brought you your favorite music. So that's kind of flow for me. There might be that little bit of a dial that I have to turn it one way, turn it another. So the frequency is just right. Then I can hear my favorite song. So that's kind of a way to describe it because it's all energy. Just like any of the radio stations and how sound travels. I mean, think about it. It's that kind of sound for me, and it's a vibration. So I have to be connected. I have to be grounded, first of all. I have to be quiet internally and externally. And I talk about external quiet, not looking like being secluded in a cubby with ivy on the brick, and wood paneling. That's one kind of quiet. I'm talking about the quiet that a quarterback must find in the midst of a stadium. I've always wondered about that. How can they focus? Or any athlete in a stadium environment with all the screaming. Now I get it. It's a discipline. And because once you get there, it's such a reward that I've learned how to dial that dial on the radio to get into that flow. Is that making any sense?
That makes perfect sense. Actually, you're dialing in right now to a few different things that I want to dive deeper into. You're right. Athletes can achieve this. We all have those moments, like even an actor up on a stage or a dancer in front of a huge roaring crowd, and how they just bring it. But first, you brought up something that is so fascinating to me, Kelly, and it's the idea of it's a vibration. And there's so much going on in the world of science, and people are talking a lot today about frequencies. Even light is supposed to be in waves. It's not particles anymore. And there's so much that's being discussed as far as just tapping into a frequency. It's almost like it is on a level of sound. It is something that permeates through us. And I don't know if, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's nothing like it. Back when we were younger, we didn't have access to things on a dime, did we? In fact, TV shows, right? If you weren't in front of the television set at 8 p.m., you missed it. Mm-hmm. You missed whatever show that you loved was on. You missed things if you couldn't get there. Now things are so immediate, and I do fear a little bit doesn't allow for people to develop patience and discipline to access something, and to access flow. I believe does take some patience and some discipline. So in some ways, I benefit from how the world was when I was younger. But it doesn't mean people, this new generation can't access it. I just believe I was kind of training to have the flow with those examples where things were not immediate, things were not at a finger's touch. We had to quiet ourselves. We had to be patient. We had to talk to ourselves to get to where we needed to be. Even in school, writing papers, taking exams, we had to focus. And it's different nowadays, right? And we had pencil and paper. So I think all those physical circumstances led me to develop into some sort of form that now is allowing me to access flow.
I dig everything that you're saying. Maybe that's part of what's going on in today's society as well. You hear so many people that talk about they feel disconnected, even though we're more connected because of social media. And you can tap on anything you want at any given time, and you're going to watch that thing. But once upon a time, there were 3 channels on TV, right? We were all watching the news, and it was one of 3 networks. That was it. You were watching somebody like Walter Cronkite. And at that moment in time, all over the world, or at least in your community or in your, in your country, in your state, people were doing the exact same thing that you're doing. So there was like this universal tapping into this thing. Whereas nowadays, because we can just go and pick something here and there, we can decide when to listen and watch that podcast, which is awesome. To your point, I'm not saying that that's not great, but maybe there was something to the fact that we were doing all of these things together and at once that helped elevate our vibrations.
Yeah, that's that connection. That's that universal connectedness. That is what I talk about in the world small. Yeah. Right? That connectedness. And what I believe when I talk about vibration and energy, that's why I use nature as something to anchor our connectedness. That's why the world small is about tucking in under the same blanket of the sky every night. That's why it's about having similar experiences wherever geographically you may be located, because we have a childhood collective. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And the world small gives you the energy and the feeling of that. It creates an essence that I believe will resonate, not even just with the children, but everybody who interacts with the children.
It sure does. And we have a stack of books here. We have Inclusive All, which you can see behind me. I drew that one just because I like the peacock. We have Boots Rain. We have My Name is Light. We have so many books. So can you tell us how long it took to write these? So you got into your flow state and you wrote 31 books in all. How long did that take?
Well, Desiree, that's the fascinating thing. I actually wrote more than that. I limited it to 31. So within 2 weeks, 14 days, April 2022, within 14 days, I had 27 books, manuscripts, curated art, ready to go. Okay, hold on. I didn't have the synopsises yet, but I had the books ready to go to publish. Then within the next week, I fine-tuned it. Oh, look at that art. I fine-tuned it down to the 31. I had so much flow, so many poems I wanted to convert to nursery rhymes. I had to limit it. That's how vast it was. That's how gigantic it was. And that's why it feels important. That's why it felt like there was urgency. That's why I did my homework. I followed my gut and I got them published within 6 months of writing and creating them. And then I found Black Chateau and I got my name out in the world so that children could find me, that they could find my vibration through the advertising, through the PR, because the books are ready. The art is ready. They are waiting to be discovered and placed on shelves in the children's homes and in the libraries and in the hospitals. And I even talk about prisons where the children go to visit their parents. They should be on the bookshelves in the family room of prisons because they are a layer of support. That's why the flow was so amazing. These books are gifts to the children from the most loving, universal vibration you could ever hope to access. I almost look at it as that, like, I was just the cell phone. You know, the messages came through the cell phone and I just did the work, but I answered the collective call of the children. And the goal is for the children to have access to these because I believe it will lift them up. It will create the positive self-talk. And that's why the flow was so incredible, so intense. And so, in a way, I'll call it serious. This wasn't anything to mess around with. This was like, this should happen. And I was like, oh, I don't disagree.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is there are messages, very profound, deep messages behind all of the books. So can you talk a little bit more specifically about some of those messages and what it means for the children? And as you pointed out, for the adults in their life. You know, this is a guide for teachers and educators and parents, too.
Yes. And don't forget, at that point, when you're the decision maker, to really look at my synopsises because they do exactly what you're talking about, Desiree. They really, I spent a lot of time on them. Well, a lot of time compared to the writing because the writing was so fast. The synopsises, I really took a piece from my background in early childhood development from the preschool work I did. But, you know, for example, I mean, the Inclusive All, what better time is there for a book like the Inclusive All, a nursery rhyme that a child can learn and recite in their head. And it's so fantastic because it takes the child on a journey. It takes the child on a journey. And I say, I found a place during a journey recent. It is a place so unique and exceptionally decent. You know, I had never before found so special a place, although it did take a voyage into a distant space. So I give them permission to be in reality, but also to dream of a place where everything nice organically interacts. Everything is comfortable. Everything is in its own zone, but also in a collective flow. In fact, this is collective flow, the inclusive all. It really is. So that's like one of the examples. Now, my name is Wing. My name is, these are the books that are so important for childhood development, for identity of self, right? And for modeling healthy communication, which can actually create flow for children. Because I think the childhood flow is more about how they interact with the world. That's when they're learning how to do so. And the my name is Wing is all about, a wing that doesn't realize that it's been clipped. And when a wing is clipped, it's not able to be what it is and serve its purpose. But it's a gentle journey to get there. And there's a very respectful dialogue that I'm trying to model healthy interpersonal communication for children and the world, how they interact, but also how they talk to themselves.
And tell us a little bit about how you felt personally, because I have to imagine that you felt perhaps more in control of your environment and your actions while doing this. What did it do for you physically, mentally, etc.?
Talk about freedom. Talk about mission and purpose and being in alignment. Mm-hmm. I have chills when I say that. That's what the books and the writing did. It put me in alignment with my purpose, my reason for being here, my goals, my aspirations, and that freedom. I talk about how I did a lot of this on my own. Desiree, I was alone when I was writing. I had a close friend, but I was pretty isolated. And I believe it's like the butterfly in the cocoon. The caterpillar, I should say, in the cocoon, having to kind of work its way through the development before it beats its way out. And that's what I was doing. And then the books were the butterfly that emerged. So this was gigantic for me. And of course, I talk about the experiential part of the books. Each and every book has some piece of me and my soul and my journey. And it gives me energy and hope and excitement to believe that maybe my hardest, darkest journeys resulted in something beautiful, in something that can be touched and held and learned and heard through the audio. I don't think that I've ever had such a great feeling in my own skin, in my own soul, in my own mind. The whole thing came together in beautiful collaboration. And I celebrate that all the time.
It is true. I hear that from others as well, that there's this feeling. It's enjoyable. It's almost like a natural type of a high. And there's that connectivity. In some cases, it's almost spiritual for people because they feel they're at one with their environment, with the universe, whatever you may like to call it. So I think that's really beautiful, the way you describe it and the way that makes you feel. We touched on this a little bit before about the conditions. Do you feel that there's any conditions that typically one can create to achieve flow? I know you talked about you weren't necessarily behind your ivy covered walls, or, you talked a little bit about the football player, but do you think that there are any conditions or environments that people can create in order to achieve flow?
Well, honestly, the biggest condition is the self-talk and the inner critic. That, honestly, if we conquer that, we can write or create anywhere. So that to me would be the biggest takeaway is that this, okay, they're there. I can't say that I don't have these inner critics and these folks that want to chat with me from time to time when and I say, acknowledge that. Say, listen, I talk to myself. I live alone with a dog. So I say, listen, y'all, I know you're there to try to help and protect me. However, at this time, you've done your job. Go get a Starbucks. Take a coffee break. I'm good. I'm okay. Conquering that is gigantic. Because once that is conquered, then you can actually be out in the world and be inspired by what you see and by what I talk about, the seed and those little hits, those intuitive hits. So then it really isn't so much about the actual circumstantial environment. It's all about the individual, true self environment. When you create from that space, there is no stopping you. And I have this sense that when people do that, it'll raise other people's hopes and motivations and energy. And that shared goodness is catching, and it's positive, and it's igniting. I use the word igniting in some of my books. So it's like I said, it's just not so much like I write when I'm walking the dog. I talk about this, you know, I'm cleaning up after him. I'm holding his leash. It might be raining. And because I've at that moment, I must have conquered those inner voices that are maybe from childhood, not entirely healthy. I can do what I'm meant to do, and I can access flow so much easier. So I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is to focus more on that. The rest is gravy. Then it's about what makes you light up. Okay, is it a quiet cubby, surrounded with wood? Is it out in a park, sitting on a rock, looking up at the canopy of trees? Is it on the couch on a rainy day where you feel permission to be at ease?
Yeah.
That's what I want to get across.
Well, I appreciate that you're bringing it up, because it's such an individual type of a thing. And yet it goes back to that universal connective type of a state that we get into. I know that music for a lot of people might be the impetus. Like you said, walking your dog. Somebody might not even think of walking the dog, but you get fresh air and oxygen. You're with your best buddy. Right? So I think you're right. It's a matter of looking for the means and the ways. Some people might do it through meditation, maybe while doing yoga, maybe while doing endurance exercises. I've talked about this, and I'll just bring it up really, really quick here. I like Magic Mind because it contains a lot of organic ingredients, but it also contains a very active and powerful ingredient called lion's mane mushrooms. And there's a lot of research into the good benefits of mushrooms. We know there's other kinds of mushrooms and things out there too. We're not going to necessarily dig into that, but there's certain elements in our world, certain foods that we eat, ingredients that we can take that help give us a little bit of a boost as well.
I do a lot of essential oils, Desiree. And what you're talking about with Matt, can you repeat the name?
Oh yeah, Magic Mind.
Okay, so that sounds like a very similar tapping into plant. It helps us connect with Gaia, and when we're connected with Gaia, that is definitely an opening for flow, isn't it? So it absolutely can assist with calming the external, getting into the internal, grounding with Gaia, and anything, any universal flow you want to tap into. And then what do you have? You have head to toe energy. That is where you want to create from.
And you mentioned essential oils too. And it's like we're touching on all of the senses, right? It could be visual, it could be auditory, it could be fragrances that help calm us and relax us, because again, there's a lot of research behind how scents can stimulate us and affect us in so many different ways.
Absolutely. So I forget that these are such normal parts of my day. I forget I forget that there's something to be talked about. But when you brought that up and the ingredients that, I think we can tune in and figure out what's good for us that way and go with it. Give it a try. Give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think nowadays it's really easy to get caught up in maybe an unhealthy lifestyle. We are more stressed than ever before. We don't eat very well. We could probably do a whole show on the types of food that one can eat. I believe wholeheartedly, at least for myself, that we should eat a whole diet, balanced diet, not a lot of processed foods. I worry about some of the chemicals and the additives that we are putting into our food system. And again, that affects not only flow, but our lifestyle, our lives, our health and wellness in so many different ways. Really, really fascinating stuff if you really start thinking about it. But okay, running up against the clock. So I want to ask you, what's next, Kelly? What have you gotten into one of these flow states recently and you started writing some more books? What can we look forward to in the future?
Desiree, yes, of course. I have so many more nursery rhymes to add to the collection. I say they're waiting to be born. I'm asking them to be patient at the moment, but they know they're on deck and they know they're kind of on the tarmac. They will be born and they've already been created. And then, of course, I am curating my contemporary poetry collection, which is above 70 poems at this point. And those poems are just, I feel they're just incredible. And so, yeah, I'm right now, I feel like I'm writing more of those, the contemporary. Now, really any poem I write can be adapted into the nursery rhyme format. However, it's all about what the topic is. So, if it's something I feel a child could benefit from in early childhood development, that's when it becomes a nursery rhyme. If I feel it's to support a child who's grown up with my stories and wants to age in to contemporary poetry, or also for the people that are working with the children wanting contemporary poetry from me, that's what I'm really giving life to right now. And it's just, I can't even tell you how magical it is and how I feel that these poems are really going to be a layer of support, like I talked about the children's books, for adults and for people that are going on certain journeys. And I cover a lot of ground. I cover the really difficult days. Yeah. And then I cover hope and I cover resilience. So that's on, girl, that I am writing like crazy. I'm not publishing like crazy at the moment, but I am creating. And of course, I'm still painting. I love to paint with oils and watercolor and acrylic. And that's another outlet for my flow. And it's amazing to see what shows up on the canvas when I paint. So I think I'm going to be very busy.
I'm busy and I'm just trying to hold all your books up. And I'm like, am I getting them all? And that's a great point too. I think as creatives, I tend to often say writers and creatives because writers are generally creative in more than just one way. To your point, you're writing poetry for children and for adults, but then you're also painting and people can explore dance, music. There's so many different things that they can do. So I applaud you, Kelly, for doing so much. Can you tell folks, I know, for example, you have a YouTube channel. That's another way you're exploring your creativity. Yes. Can you let people know where to find you, find your books? Give us your details.
Yes, absolutely. I like to say to Google Kelly Anne Manuel, I like people to find their way to me. What resonates when you search for me? Of course, the YouTube channel with me reading some of my books to the children is a wonderful way to dip your toe in the water with what I'm creating and feel how it feels and see how your child reacts. That I would highly encourage. Also, the Hoopla, it's audiobooks in the library system. Mm-hmm. Download one from your library. And I say, try before you buy. Download it. It's free. Give it a shot. And I can practically guarantee you're going to want more once you put your toe in the water with me. But hey, you don't have to spend the money until you dip your toe in the water. Go to your library. Oh, even ask your libraries possibly to start carrying the books. That would be fantastic. But, I hybrid self-published with Balboa Press. For me, Balboa Press is the best way for people to actually order my physical copies of the book. That's the best quality paper that I can be assured of. So there's, but the YouTube, I do think that's fantastic. And as you know, that was out of my comfort zone. But look at me now. Getting there, Desiree.
I know. Exactly. Look at you now. Kelly Anne Manuel, you also have audiobook versions if people are more auditory explorers and learners, especially little ones. Little ones can really open things up creatively when they're listening, right? And I know also you're on Goodreads too. So
yes, I forget. I'm on Goodreads. It's such a vast world.
It is. And I'm so happy, Kelly Anne Manuel, that you are a part of our vast world. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Gosh, Desiree, that means a lot. And I appreciate you and all you do.
All right. And I appreciate everybody who's watching and listening. Thank you for being with us on the Books That Make You show. You can also follow us. We are on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube as well, and TikTok. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.